Good morning and God bless you. Yesterday, the governor of the state of Washington imposed a total lockdown on our state. By now, you've already heard about that. Unfortunately, that means that the church will no longer be available for prayer. If that changes, we will celebrate that and we'll get that information to you as quickly as possible. Please continue to pray with us for Cornerstone Church, members in particular. We've had several surgeries. Sister Penny Varnell is in surgery right now as we speak. Let's continue to keep her in prayer. Sister Kayla Jackson just got out of the hospital. We want to thank God for a successful surgery and just continue to pray for our church family, our community, and our country. And I know that God is in the middle of this and God is listening. This morning, I have felt for the last several days to talk about something very important that I want to bring to you. It's found in 2 Corinthians chapter number 12, a familiar passage of scripture that I want to read. Begin reading in verse number 7. We're talking about the Apostle Paul here. And he says in verse number 7, "And lest I should be exalted above measure through the abundance of the revelations, there was given to me a thorn in the flesh, the messenger of Satan to buffet me, lest I should be exalted above measure. For this thing I besought the Lord thrice, that it might depart from me. And he said unto me, My grace is sufficient for thee, for my strength is made perfect in weakness." Then Paul responded to this. He said, "Most gladly, therefore, will I rather glory in my infirmities, that the power of Christ may rest upon me. Therefore, I take pleasure in infirmities, in reproaches, in necessities, in persecutions, in distresses, for Christ's sake. For when I am weak, then am I strong." I want to talk to us for a few moments this morning about finishing touches. The Apostle Paul here in 2 Corinthians chapter number 12, this is the second letter that he is writing to the church that he was the spiritual father of. Of course, in Acts chapter number 18, the Apostle Paul started this church. It was written between the years AD 55 and 60. The apostle to the Gentiles is approximately 58 years of age. He has already made full proof of his ministry. He's been to Galatia, Macedonia, Corinth, and he has already been to Ephesus at the time of this writing, and he has already written 1st and 2nd Thessalonians. This is a man that has already thundered through the power of God in all of these places that I've already read to you. He has bound the power of Satan. He has preached the gospel. He has seen numerous healings. He's seen the power of God sweep across entire regions. And yet, as we read this particular passage of scripture, we see that God knows best in denying an immediate healing to come to the Apostle Paul. He comes to this understanding in verse number 7. He said, "And lest I should be exalted above measure through the abundance of the revelations, there was given to me a thorn in the flesh, the messenger of Satan to buffet me, lest I should be exalted above measure." And so Paul is recognizing that although I have been used in healing, I've been anointed to preach the gospel, I've been led of the Spirit, I've been communicated by angels to me, I have seen healings, I prayed for healings, I have bound the devil, I have been used of God to spiritually and regionally fight demonic forces. Even though I was involved in all those things, God is not answering my prayer to have this thorn in the flesh removed from my life. And so in the midst of all the abundance of revelations that the Apostle Paul had received, he gets another revelation. And this is a personal revelation. That God is using the enemy to inflict pain in my life to bring me to a place of understanding. And the understanding is that even though I've been given great revelations, and even though God has used me greatly and mightily as the apostle to the Gentiles, there are still some things in me that God sees as being removed, refined, or repented over. And so the Apostle Paul finally comes to the place of realizing that, you know what? I'm going to rest in God's grace because he knows best, for he is the one that has an elevated view of me. And he says, most gladly, therefore, will I glory in my infirmities. This is not something that the Apostle Paul arrived at on his own while he was being used of God. This is not something that the Apostle Paul was able to confess or profess while he was watching other people be healed. This is something that the Apostle Paul arrived at through a messenger of Satan. Uniquely, after praying 3 times that God would remove this, Paul recognizes this is one situation that is going to remain in place because God has finishing touches that he is performing in my life. I wonder if there's anybody that's watching this morning, that you have a situation that you've prayed about. It's onerous, it's negative, it's ugly. Maybe it's just the crisis we're in as a country and you're being greatly inconvenienced, greatly stretched and pressed. And yet it's not immediately going away. In fact, we're assured that it's not going to go anywhere for at least 2 weeks. Could it be that this is a grand opportunity for us, not just as an individual, but for us as a people, to find a place in prayer where God can begin to do finishing touches? Maybe there's a wrinkle, maybe there's a flaw, maybe there's a stain on my garment, maybe there's some imperfection in my character that possibly I don't see. But from God's elevated viewpoint, God recognizes that the end is in view, and he wants all of us to graduate with a full reward. In Philippians chapter 1 and verse number 6, the Apostle Paul wrote this, being confident of this very thing, that he which has begun a good work in you will perform it until the day of Jesus Christ. That phraseology, the day of Jesus Christ, is unique to the end time. It's relevant to the day of the Lord, or the end times that is used, end time scenarios that is used throughout Scripture. The day of Jesus Christ is referring to the day of his appearing, the day of our calling up to him at the sound of the trump. I want God to have free course to work in me so that I, like Paul, can understand. Therefore, I'm going to gladly rejoice in the finishing touches. God bless you. Thank you for joining with us. Share this video with others. We'll look forward to seeing you tomorrow. God bless.